This episode of Gabbing with Gaby is brought to you by the Breeders Direct Seed Company. In my opinion, the Breeders Direct Seed Company is your premier source for clones and seeds, and they are the only place that you can get the Gaby Staten Island collection. So visit Breeders Direct for all your seed and clone needs. What's up, everybody? This is Gaby Staten Island, and this is the Craft Growers Network. And we have an exciting interview today with Marc Gallo. Say hello, Marc.
Hey, howdy, everybody. Happy holidays. It's a pleasure to be here and chop it up,
All
I'm
right.
Marcus Aurelius, 95 on Instagram, Golden Road Seed Company, and I work with the Grateful Head LLC, which we'll be delving into a little bit during the show.
Great. And these are my co-hosts, my Slovenian Hobbit brother, also known as Sasha.
Hey, everybody.
And go ahead, and Sasha, tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, I met Gaby like what is it now? 20 days ago over Instagram, and we've been connecting like you don't connect normally like this every day to somebody. So I instantly also knew that he's a brother, from another mother. And yeah, this is our generation, I think, is one of these generations that lived through sometimes that if you know somebody, you don't need to hear a lot. And then it's just natural. It happens. It's like this chemistry, right? And I've actually after these two podcasts now, it's normalized now for me that we are communicating so much actually, because like, I want to maintain this all the way through. And I'm really happy that you invite me all the time to this podcast, because I think I represent a lot of the Europeans, growers and craft people in cannabis that maybe should also have a voice. And in the future, I think there will be others that will join the conversation.
Yeah, well, that's so beautiful. International connectivity through the plant we love is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
We also have Nick Wolfe here joining us. And I met Nick through the craft marijuana Reddit, and we started communicating, and it was similar to my relationship with my Slovenian Hobbit brother. When we started talking, I wanted to know more about him, and he helped me with our first podcast. I'm super grateful for him. I think he really contributes to what we're doing here. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and I'll let you tell a little bit about what you're doing as well, Nick, while I lower my heat.
Yeah, I'm Nick Wolfe, or Mr. Wolf Grows on Instagram and Reddit, and I'm a moderator for the craft marijuana subreddit, and I also am a manager, or one of the cultivation managers for TA cultivators in Oregon. It's a small indoor with a 2-acre outdoor that we do, and I'm a hobbyist enthusiast for the plant.
And we might have one more person joining us. His name is Cosmic. He's got a company called Cosmic Strains, and he's kind of our producer here. None of us are getting paid for doing this podcast, so he has other responsibilities he has to tend to, but hopefully he will join us. He helped me record my first podcast. We did it on Zoom, and he just recorded me. And I'm so grateful for him because he helped break the seal, or the way Sasha says, he helped me turn over the rock. And once it's turned over, it's hard to close it. It's like opening up the box. You can't close it. He's a great guy. He's doing meristem tissue culture at home, which I think is pretty interesting. There's a lot of people doing nodal tissue culture, as a hobby and as a home thing, but he's actually doing meristem tissue culture at home. So I think that he has a lot to offer people on this network as well. So we're going to get started. And the first thing I want to do is tell Marc, what we're trying to do is give you an opportunity to tell your story.
Okay.
And we don't want the abridged version. We want you to, tell us your whole story. Let's start from, how you were originally exposed to cannabis and, move your way through what you're doing today.
I originally was exposed to weed at around the age of 12, and I lived in Lower Bucks County, PA, north of Philly, and it was, I'd say, a reasonably affluent community. And directly across the street, my best friend lived, and it was housing projects. But I got along with everybody, and I would hang out there. I would play basketball. That's where all my friends were. And back then, nobody really cared. There wasn't as much as a stigma, it seemed. So I would be across the street playing basketball, and my best friend lived there. And he called me over one day. His brother-in-law was a weed dealer, and he had managed to, to snag a handful of roaches from the ashtray. So the very
From his
first
parents?
time, from the sister's husband was a dealer, so he lifted some right from the ashtray, and I remember it clear as day. We had a ball field near the highway where we'd play baseball, and there was a mulberry tree there, and he rolled this big pregnant doober out of all the roaches, and I can remember just sitting under the tree like, oh my God, my whole world just exploded, and I was like, wow, that's what this is, and it lasted forever, and I remember it lasted long enough that I was wary of headed right home to let my parents see. I was definitely not trying to get caught then at the early age. And that sparked the interest. That got the ball rolling. And eventually, a few years later after that happened, my family decided it would be better to move me from the city into a more rural situation. And they bought a bunch of horses and a farm. And that's where it really ramped up. So having compost as a kid, it's the last place you want to have to do weed whacking in gardening. And we had a huge manure pile, and I always took notice how big all the weeds got in the pile. So my family inadvertently hired deadheads as farmhands, not knowing, see where I'm going with this, what a deadhead was. And I was in my glory. I'm like, I work with these guys. So long story short, they were getting really high-end imports back then. We're going back to 1982, 83 as a 13-year-old. I'm on this farm. So I would buy $50 ounces of high-end imports that came from like Belize, Mexico. There were some ties back then. And it wasn't brick the way we know it fully. It was compacted, and it was just very lightly seeded. So I remember getting the ounce. I'd pay them, and they'd hide it in the mailbox after the mail people already came, so my parents wouldn't find it. So when I'd pay them, I'd walk down to the mailbox, after 12 o'clock and grab my ounce. And this particular bag that was Belize, I believe it came from Belize, I really loved. So I already knew where I was going to put it because I had a manure pile. So the first seed that I grew was as very young teenager, and I got a pound off that one plant, and it was better than the weed that it came from. And then, man, that I was off to the races.
Wow.
Your parents
Literally
never
seed.
found it in the compost pile?
Yeah, I got a pound plant as a teenager, not knowing anything. Just
How
watered
did
it.
you get away with it? How did your parents not find it?
They knew I was getting stoned by then, and my dad tolerated it. Dad was cool, and I found out later he might have been a closet smoker, and he hid it from me. That came out a little later, so he let it rock out. No, there were times, believe me, as a teenager when I'd piss him off, that he would get the weed whacker and just stand there in slow motion and go from the top to the bottom of the plant while making eye contact with me. So I learned the hard way. But after that, high times became a thing, and I started collecting those. And that was when the first knowledge of Amsterdam and genetics and all that, really came into my mind. And I think then after that, I started, I bought Marijuana Botany. I bought the Marijuana Growers Bible. And I think I first started growing with chemicals, not knowing any better, because there wasn't a lot out there on organic. And the only things we had available in the 80s, 90s were like Rapid Grow, Peter 2020, Miracle Grow. So that was my next advance. was like, maybe it's not a good idea to put it in the manure pile. Dad may chop it down. So then it moved to digging big holes, like I read about in some of the books, and then I just put straight compost in the hole. And it
Well,
worked. Plants would have new deficiencies when they were done, but I was just excited. I'm making bud yearly. And it kept going then with those commercial indoors, and some of them wouldn't finish, obviously, because they were equatorial, but the ones that did were tired. And I kept doing that for a while until after graduating high school in 1989. The next year, there had been a local guy that was a legend that was a year ahead of me that had already graduated that had the best weed around. And he was kind of standoffish, but I grew some balls one day and I went to his house unannounced. And that's where he handed me a brown paper bag. I can still see it with these plants that had really fat leaves. I looked like cabbage. I'd never thought or been exposed to cannabis indica other than the ad. And, that's when my first reading started as a teen. And to this day, I think that may be my Grail Afghani. I'm the opposite of him. He never took notes. So when I inquired about what this is, he said, I would think it was some Afghani I had gotten from Vermont. So I grew that out and was just blown away. I mean, the sativa I was growing was great, but this stuff is narcotic. It had fan leaves bigger than my hand, tight internodes, and it didn't mold. So ran that through the end of the 80s through the 90s. But I really, even though I read books, I didn't have the real-time breeding chop. And I remember each successive cross, maybe I didn't do the best selection, but it didn't resemble what I first started with. So out of frustration, we're getting to the mid-90s, once the punch was lost, I realized I needed to go to Amsterdam. So I saved money, and it took a while as a kid, and young man then, to get the money together. And the first year I went there was 1999, and it was for money I saved from my outdoor escapades. So that was the first year, and I went over there, and amazingly, I ended up meeting Neville inadvertently, and this is a crazy story. It was with my ex, recently deceased from cancer, and anyhow, we walked off the beaten path, off of Dam Square, into a very small, I believe the name of it was the Emerald Triangle Trading Company, where I met an American who owned the place, and we had mentioned Neville. And he said, well, speak of the devil, I believe I have an appointment with him if you want to hang out and meet him. And that's when he walked in proper business attire, leather attaché case. And I bought super silver haze seeds from him that he sucked out of the weed there. I have an old VHS of the whole trip, including parts of that outing from the old camcorders that I need to get converted to disc, which I plan on sharing that in the near future. We did the marijuana hash museum, where I met Eagle Bill there. I met Mila, the hash queen, where she showed us the pollinator. We went to the Stex Museum, the Van Gogh Museum. So a lot of it's on there. Two crazy, stoned out white people from the U.S. not knowing anything.
Can I ask you?
Can
Can I ask you which month in the year were you there? In the winter time, or in the spring, or the summertime?
Unfortunately, I believe it was in the winter, and I can't remember, but it's listed on the top of the camcorder tape.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I didn't get to see the tulips out on full display along the single canal and all that stuff. But I learned not to try to bring tulips through customs. That's a whole nother story. The first time.
welcome,
What's up,
Cosmic.
Cosmic?
What's that?
Cosmic has joined us.
Cosmic Haze.
Oh, cool. So that first year, I believe I bought most of the Sensi Seed Bank library. I had met Adam Dunn there at TH Seeds. We recently did an anniversary issue, which was pretty cool. Chop it up. But from what I remember, I got Durban Poison the first year. I got Shiva Skunk. I got Early Skunk from them. I got Juicy Fruit from them. and maybe a few others I forget because that was a very long time ago. But I can remember what I got from Adam Dunn because he had shared something he wasn't sharing with the public as well. From THC's headquarters, I got tuna butter, which is no longer on the menu. Chocolate something or other, chocolate trip maybe, no longer on his menu. And I got the sage, which made a huge impact on me. We'll get into a little bit more of that later. And then I remember, oh yeah, MK Ultra. That's another one I brought back that first trip.
Nice.
But then I remember thinking maybe it's best to ask Adam if he has something that's not released to the public that he would come up off of. Adam gave me Pollyanna, which I believe is a Robert Cannell Clark heirloom sativa, which was the early building block of early Pearl and Silver Pearl. So I managed to get that from him. And some of the others were Yumboldt from Sagarmatha, which it was just absolutely amazing. I don't think that's even in circulation anymore. His Bubbleberry, which was absolutely incredible. What else did I get from him that really made an impression on me? The Western Winds, which was a Cali Mist knockoff, that was also amazing. And,
Did you get the sage or the sage and sour?
I got the shade.
Wow,
And,
that wasn't one that he gave out.
Yeah.
He used to sell the sage and sour, but I don't remember him releasing the sage.
He did. The sage was a regular release, and then it became feminized later in time. The sage was definitely released to the general public because the seeds I bought were in the THC's packaging, and I ended up running a cut commercially that we kept around for years. It really did good in PA. I eventually ended up naming my band Sage that made such an impact, and we banded pretty well for a good many years. So yeah, it all dates back to that fateful trip. And then 99 I went back. Or no, I'm sorry, 99 was first year. I went back 2001, and that's when I started noticing a discernible difference in the Sensi seed stock. And that's when as Adam Dunn coined the term, I got Dutch because I went to my tried and trues, and it makes sense that holdovers that were still good after the raids, but some of the stock took the hit early on because I remember bringing the same Durban back from the same vendor I went to the last time, and all of it was hay. It was like unrecognizable. And that was the last trip I took there. But I think one of the things I want to delve into is pre-98 seems to be the desired stock, but a lot of the Dutch vendors had leftover stock that extended into the 2000s of those strains. So a lot of people think after 2000, it was undesirable. It all depends on if it was holdover or not, because they had bulk that lasted probably, I think, into 2001 and maybe even beyond. That was when I first started noticing their packs weren't good,
Also others, not only Sensi seeds, I will tell you now. There is other big producers that are still on the scene from the Dutch scene, and the same team. Maybe Simon from Sirius stayed the same. I met him a few times, but he always kept his few strains. You know what I mean? And then he bought up the Magus Genetics when Magus was closed, right? So that was the only. Yeah.
Garrett the breeder, that brings back memories because his Warlock was insanity, and that's a shout out to my boy Johnny Bones at Grateful Heads. He's got a Warlock cut that's a banger, and that's Magus Genetics. Jarrett was the breeder, if I recall from memory.
Yes, and I don't know the story why the Magus Genetics stopped working, but I know that Simon took over the genetics. We had a double Dutch cut in Austria circulating for many years. I think it's still alive, circulating still. It's still a really, really strong plant, branchy, stocky, has particular attributes, that everybody wants. So, yeah, these genetics are still alive. In some little, in little, even the Erdbeerly, before we recorded, you talk about the Swiss genetics, right? You remember the elderly and all the old seeds,
Al production and Felix mass producing beautiful
yes,
flowers in fields, Switzerland, of course. I would never forget that.
yeah, that is
It's a big
his.
and very little known part of cannabis history over there.
Yes, all his name was Felix Kautz, and I
Mhm.
think he really was this real cannabis soldier, the one sometimes people say that the hippies that came, the hippie trail that was before the pioneers that got the genetics from these far lands, that came to the West, then, for us to enjoy, like you said before, you got the land races, let me say, and then it watered down in time, and then you went to Amsterdam in the right time, right? So please continue, because it's really interesting what you're
Oh
telling me.
yeah, yeah. So we were dependent on the exchange, and after the Dutch bank fell off because I was lost, a lot of them paid for mortgages for us, and aware of Cannabis Canada, cannabis culture, and the whole thing going on up there. Thank you to High Times magazine. So after the Dutch stock fell off, and I blew a lot of money on my last trip to Amsterdam, unfortunately. I started using Mark Emery, Heaven Stairway, Hemp Depot, BC Seed Company, British Columbia Seed Company, and I was amazed. And it wasn't like when you sent seeds to someone in Amsterdam where you wait a month, you don't get any. Back then there wasn't tracking, and you might get them. You would check the mailbox, it'd be like maybe show up in 2 months. Canada was closer, and it was quicker, and that was the next thing because I really panicked, and I really wasn't doing a ton of dedicated breeding there, just some chucks at home because the genetics I knew would work, and I needed them to keep the lights going. So then I started running off the top of my head Dutch Treat times Purple Skunk from a probably now defunct breeder. That did really well for us. Island Sweet Skunk from Federation. That's the other one I forgot. Did great for us in our climate. And what else did I find from there that was a staple? DTC company, I believe it was White Widow times NL5, and I can't remember the name. It might have been called White Lightning or the Lightning or something like that. So ran those for a while, and kind of the same thing started happening with those tanks. Quality went down. Some of them just went completely defunct. And this might have been circa 2002, 3 through 4. I think it started to fall off. And that's when on IFMAG, I discovered, some breeders that were local, like Bob.
Oh yeah, bulk seeds, yes.
They're like
And that
bubble gum.
changed my life. That changed my life from then on. I got his first seeds going back to his first drop, and that was a game changer for me. And not only were they cheaper, they were domestic. I could get them shipped, and it wouldn't take a month before you got them. You'd know you'd get them. And yeah, I kept running with that. And that's when I really started doing my first successful chucks and then going back, vine breeding stuff. I think not shortly after that, if I recall from memory, it was also the old Print Yourself forum was up, and that's where I got some from Indian guy, the 88 G13 hash plant that was going around on Treating Yourself forum, which I still have. I managed to keep Siva Skunk from that first trip, which I'm about to F4. I have those in seed stock. Early Skunk I still have, which needs to have an increase done, and the Super Skunk pack that just came into my hands, I will not get there, but that's a whole other topic because I was blown away. So somebody randomly who I had a few communications with out of nowhere said, I feel like these would do good in your hands, and that's kind of how that came to fruition.
Nice. Have you like what are you getting off of the Super Skunk? I know that you just put it into flower, but like does it bring back any memories of perhaps running it from decades earlier? Or
Yeah, the plants are spot on, man, and I have a peculiarly overactive olfactory sense and palate. It's weird where a smell from a decade ago will register with me, and then I'll put that memory together. So they are spot on as I remember them. Same leaf morphology and very uniform for an F1 cross. That's what they were when they made them. I got only 8 seeds, and they're all going. There were a total of 5 males and 3 females, and there's basically 2 main phenotypes I'm seeing, and the one is probably the maple leaf Afghan ET leaner, and I'd like to call that a totem structure with minimal side branching. They all have non-hollow stems, and that's the other indicator that I know. And I think the stem rubs that I'm getting from them, the one phenotype is like Tate dinner turpentine, with an almost sulfuric smell with skunk mixed in there. And the other phenotype is skunky, grid Afghan type, but maybe the back end of. I'm very good at describing terpenes. The creamy sweetness almost defies description. I would say maybe citrus, but we're not talking anything fruity at all here. We're talking maybe grapefruit.
Sure.
And that's exactly how I remember them. So the telltale sign will be the orange pistils, because that was a signature trait that when I grew them outdoors from 90 stock that they had. And they were also bulletproof. I remember them getting rained on and having no mold whatsoever. So
Very cool.
yeah.
You know, one thing that I remember about the Super Skunk when we used to grow it is every single crop, I would hold the Sensi Seed catalog up against my flowers, and it looked identical. And to this day, it's the only seeds that I've ever purchased that looked exactly like the photo that they were advertised with. You know,
As they should.
well, I mean, the thing is that
Yeah.
even cultural practices could change the way flowers look. You know, like if I grow the same flowers as you or as Nick, they're going to come out looking a little bit different. But with the Super Skunk, it was unbelievable that it looked identical to the catalog. It was the most uniform strain I've ever seen.
That's a great way to balance. For
Yeah.
sure. And that's another interesting topic we should get into later, how the same cut grown by 3 different people will always look different. I've even had things I've given to somebody that was completely different. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes my own cut, somebody was able to maximize the genetic potential better than I could. And I'm like, damn, dude, what did you do? You know, and I don't get mad about it. I pick his brain. So there's something to be said about the plant being an accumulator of sympathetic vibration from the person that it's around and the energy that it gives off. And that's not some hippie bullshit.
No.
No,
I mean, it can be hippie bullshit and be real at the same point, right?
That's true too.
yeah, I
But you
mean,
know, some plants, yeah.
or because
Wolfie,
like the phenotypic difference, I've always heard like, you know, you have to take environment into account, because like even if you're like a cultivar, let's say, is like the same cut, but then the phenotype is the production, you know, it's the chemotype of like what is actually produced based on the environmental factors and the grow factors, and yeah, the interactions with the grower themselves. And so I think that it's super valid, and maybe there's also just a little bit of slight misterminology sometimes in the cannabis community, just when it comes to how we've used words in the past, when it wasn't something that we could openly talk about with those who are educated botanists or horticulturalists. But yeah, I think you're spot on. Like it's going to change no matter where you're growing it. But if something is super similar across different growth environments and growth styles, that's something that's great, because then you can actually have something for someone in like a, you know, like in Slovenia, right, that they can have like, oh, they want like the Cali cookies, or the, you know, the Cali genetics or whatnot. But if you have something that can grow the same across different environments, then that's how you can get that into other people's hands.
That's a very good point. And I think even going further, how a plant will genetically acclimate to its to the outdoor environment and become more resistant to things in your own environment. There's needs to be more studies done on that aren't just bro science, with some real
I
control
think
group.
This
one
is the
thing.
picture
You love
that I
that
used to look
photo.
Oh,
at.
this is it.
Yeah.
My opinion about this is let's go a little bit deeper. From the start, cannabis behaves like that. It is a survivor plant, right? It has to survive also without the help of humans. That's how it is. So the phenotypic expressions in a gene pool are basically because if it grows in an area where there is, for example, the winter comes a little bit earlier some years, or the rainy season starts a little bit earlier in the fall, some phenotypes will survive. And because of the cross-pollination between let's say it's inbred line. It's inbred, not inbred, but it's again wild cannabis. If we would put all these skunks now outside somewhere without the help of humans, something would happen. And what would happen? In 1 year, some phenotypes would survive because there was a dry season, and they perform better in dry seasons. But they would be pollinated by males that would also give them the genetics from others. So next year, when there would be a wet season, and the other phenotypes would survive, they will also carry the genetics from the plants that would survive the other seasons. You know what I mean? It's always in a gene pool because it wants to survive. That's the basis of cannabis. It's so hard. It wants to survive in nature.
Yeah, and like even going back to what we had talked about last week too, that's like over a period of time within a genetic population like that, where they're picking up traits that are advantageous to their survival. That's the genetic drift that I was talking about, and we use the genetic drift differently in cannabis. But that within a population is the genetic drift, and it's a positive change, like almost like a microevolution.
That's why some people get weird about things with tissue culture, because some of them think it's unnatural and all, but they don't realize the chimeric and truncated expressions can occur naturally. The same things that happen, that's how we get mutations in nature.
Yep.
I've been waiting to use chimeric in a sentence, by the way. That was my time.
I loved it.
I'm glad you were able to slip that in.
Truncated mutations too.
So what then happened next on your cannabis journey, Marc? So you it sounds like you, like, once you were out of Pennsylvania, or like where were you? Where did you go to from there?
Well, we can back up for that part of the story, and part of it I'm going to intertwine what I did musically, because it's all congruent with the whole story. So as this was happening and I got better at breeding, and I had a production cut that we did really well with, I walked into a head shop in New Hope, Pennsylvania, called the Now and Then Shop, and the clerk behind the desk, I talked to him and I said, I'm a guitar player. Nice to meet you. And I have some good buds. Let's go smoke this Sage. And that's how the band Sage was started in early 2000. So in my township, I had supported myself basically by cannabis in a non-legal state, which had its trials and tribulations. We started the band, and the band started to get bigger. So I started to do music festivals on the property because my parents had a farm, and it was also, for being honest, a good way for me to clean money, because as the band got bigger and the population of the event exceeded the town that it was in, so contractors could get a tax write-off if I put their name on our banner, and it got big, and it was also a way that kept me to continue the other operation, because nobody had any idea of knowing how many people came in at the gate or how much money was being generated or not. So I was able to do that and incorporate it into a blur, and nobody messed with me. I pretty much had a symbiotic relationship with the corn farmers. I would put thousands of plants in their cornfield. We had no overhead surveillance there, and I would hand them a paycheck every November, and they were making more money off doing that with me than they were off their milk or their feed corn. So I'm like Johnny Appleseed in this very rural community in Pennsylvania, So enter 2005, and this is
How
headed
many
to
plots
Wyoming.
do you think you had going?
It was pretty nice. Our barns full on multiple properties. Well, I would plant double what I needed because half would always get taken by hunters, by rippers, irate farm owners. So it was a game of cat and mouse with them. It really was. I mean, I've been shot. I've been bitten by dogs. I've gotten cut by barbed wire. I mean, it went on until 2005, and it was all local police, though we didn't have state police or overhead surveillance. But 2005, state police came, and unbeknownst to me, they had choppers, and they had FLIR infrared. So 2005 is the first year I got paid a visit. And it scared me good, but because I didn't really have any priors at all, I got a slap on the wrist. And me being me, you know, I'm somewhat anti-authority, and I feel it's my God-given right to grow weed, so it didn't stop me. Yeah, I just moved to different locations. I'd go out of the county, north, and I got to say it was a different era back then because it took a lot of people to pull this off. It took a lot of people not to tell. It would take me telling people to meet me in the middle of a cornfield at midnight with a truck or a trailer. And there was a lot of that going on. I managed to do that unscathed till 2015. By then, the band had started having kids and we were no longer a band, but we still stay friendly. So I just kept my weed hustle going without the guys of the music festival anymore. So long story short, 2015, I caught the last lick. And that was on multiple properties, and they got me good. There was some seizure involved then, and it was the second. So I caught a Fed case in 2015, and I did over a year for that one. And they gave me an ankle monitor, but me being me, I devised a system where I knew I couldn't go far enough to maintain plants because they kept me to my driveway with the monitor. So me being me, I got skid pallets. I put casters on them. I joined two together, and I had bamboo poles, and then there was an eye hook that was that big. So through a pulley system, I could push and pull the skid pallets that had buckets on them into heavy brush, and then I could pull them to me to maintain them, and that's how I had to grow. And I never got caught, but I will tell you the thing
So
that
you're
saved
just
my
like
ass.
pulling them in and out of the garage?
No, not the
No, the
garage. High brush.
Oh, okay.
Brush.
Oh my
High
God.
brush where the driveway ended. I could
Got
push
it.
them in, pull them out. Yep. So it got pretty bad at one point because they could visit without any notification. And I remember that year I had the horse stalls where my meager crop was drying to be harvested. And it also happened that two very large vultures made a nest in there. So when the probation officer came to visit, he wanted to check all the outbuildings. I let him check all but the one. And it must have been a blessing from God because I said, I'm not sure if you want to go in there, but you can. But there are two very big vultures in there that are nested, which there were. And I mean, I couldn't have planned it any better because as I said it, one flew from the roof. And he's like, yeah, we're not doing that. Dude, I'm like splitting sausage links. I'm sure my carotid artery was doing this. And I got away with it. But it got too hot there. So while still on parole and probation for this, I did the ballsy move. I contacted the probation officer. I said, look, I'm going to sell the family farm. They left it to me, and I'm gonna head out of here to Oklahoma where I can do what I can legally. And he said, that shouldn't be a problem. I'll run it past probation and whatnot. So famous
What
last
year was
words
this?
is that I've been here 4 years, so it's 2024 now, going on 5.
So this was just 5 years ago that you were growing illegally and had the ankle monitor.
Yeah.
Because that story sounded like something you were telling from a long time ago.
Well, that's,
Wow.
wow.
No. So what happened then got even crazier because I didn't anticipate it taking any length of time to leave, to transfer the probation or any of that. So this is during the peak of COVID, and thank God that probation wasn't even coming to visit then. So I sold the property and had everything in U-Hauls, and we're staying in a hotel. And the probation says, well, have to go through what's called interstate compact. They need to transfer it to Oklahoma. And us not knowing that it was going to take that long, we were trapped in a hotel for close to 4 months at the peak of COVID. We were terrified because nobody knew what was going on then. And we had a dog in tow. So we burned through 30 grand just staying there, paying the hotel. And there was nothing we could do about it. And I was told if we contact Oklahoma to see if they accept us to move there, that they would violate my probation. So in the last hour, I risked it all, and I found out who the director of Interstate Compact was, and I was able to call, and we were able to get through and move. But
Wow.
that's how it happened. And I was shocked that Oklahoma let me get a commercial license while still on paper.
I mean,
Pretty remarkable story.
That's pretty great.
I agree.
And even more remarkable was the outpouring of genetics from people that I did not even ask, because in order to keep my sanity, I kind of made a little blog on Instagram while we were stuck in the hotel. And everybody was cheering for us, waiting for us to get there, because we were losing our shit. I'll be honest, pardon my French, we were losing our mind during that procedure, not knowing if we could leave or not. It's being, rendered lost in that hotel. So there was a big outpouring from the community, which I still can't thank anyone enough, with all kinds of genetics and love and well wishes and all. So we finally made it. Now we're here.
Did you lose a lot of genetics in the transition?
That's a good story. Yeah, not all of them. I had to go through hospice with my mother before we did the transition and move and sell the property. And he might have known I was in trouble and meant well, but there was a vault that I had in the CRISPR band that she definitely threw out. And I don't hold it against her. She was looking out for me, probably thinking I shouldn't have them there and all that. So yeah, there was a lot in there.
Sure. What's the longest mother you've been able to keep around through all your different travels and excursions and
police interactions?
Police interventions.
Police interactions. That's a good question. Probably. Oh, and here fell out. The DG4 is one of them. It's not super old, but I was able to keep that since getting it from IC Mag. That's one. The NDN guy G13 hack plant, I've had around probably since early 2000s. Those would be my oldest. Some of them people have copied them for me that I trust. So I couldn't get them here, so I was able to get some of those back. So that really doesn't count.
Oh, that still counts. That's what the community's for.
Yeah. Yes, in a non-legal state, it really took having someone you could trust to have backups for then. And that's how I think Prohibition, a lot of the legacy cuts were lost during then, because a friend means well. And then you know what it's like when you sometimes let your friends watch your garden when you go away, when you're still small scale. Never ends good. I'm sure we've all had a horror story like that. So yeah, those would be the oldest, but some of them were older that have been held by people that have gotten back to me. And I have a crap memory. I can't even remember off the top of my head. I know I have a list of what clones were introducing the Grateful Heads.
Okay.
And one of them is the Lavender Cut, which came from 90s Soma seed stock. That's a great one. We're excited to get some of those to the masses, F0 Gen cuts.
Nice.
So one thing I wanted to say is part of the reason why I'm trying to get people to document their stories is because we're all forgetting, so, stories from 30 years ago are hard to tell people. We didn't have notes, you have a VHS tape. I'm like at the edge of my seat. I really want to see that,
Yeah.
because, but the whole purpose of telling your story is so that it's documented for eternity, and so I'm
I'm
glad that you're
sure.
telling your story.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain with today's technology that can be converted to disc. I should look into that. I think I'm going to make that a priority
You
when I get
really
off
should
it.
do it soon because tape loses quality. It's not digital.
I didn't
Okay.
even think of that.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
even if I have to pay out to have somebody do forensic retrieval, I don't think it's a stretch because we have that technology today. At
well,
worst possible scenario.
I mean, I know a little something about this. When the tape is damaged,
Mm-hmm.
there's no recovering it.
Oh,
Okay. Because this is like if you have a painting and you chip off some of the paint, like maybe somebody else could paint up, you know. So really, you just need to go do that right away, is have that video digitized. And then, once it's digitized, it lasts forever. But when you have actual tape, like I'll give you an example. And I know you're a deadhead and a fish head, but like old cassette tapes, after a while, they're no good anymore. And VHS is kind of the same thing for video. So it's a
just so
magnetic
you
tape.
know, I'm 8-track old.
Okay. I had 8 tracks too. My
Yeah.
parents did,
That's going to be a priority. That'll be real cool to share and get that done. So that's definitely going to happen, and it'll validate some of this stuff too in video format. You can only say so much in words, and then that way that's locked forever. That's a frozen moment in time, like you had said.
Yeah, so you get out to Oklahoma in 2020, and like what what's your first moves once you get to Oklahoma? Do you have a property or like you said you get a license? Tell us more.
The first move was getting the license, which happened seamlessly. I was able to have somebody who already had a license put me on there. Or OMMA really cracked down on everything. We had minimal visits from OMMA. We weren't huge. It was a 30 by 20 shop with a 40 lighter and 5 acres of outdoor was what we first started at. And boy, did I get an education in a new climate because I thought I had done my breeding on the humid East Coast until I came to a river bottom in Oklahoma. And if we're being completely honest, and people should share their failures too. My first outdoor crop, I would say, was 80% loss, if I'm being honest. And because there is all different kinds of viroids and fungus here that I never encountered on the East Coast. So it was a learning curve. We got set up right away, and I think my first legal sale was Indiana bubblegum. In fact, it was our first legal sale. We were really proud of it. But what did I do when I first got there, you would ask? I decompressed from the trauma that happened, man. Nobody knew what was going on with COVID. We were seeing people outside in hazmat suits testing the septic for the hotel.
Wow.
And it was a scary time because, and I'm by no means politicizing this. People do, they get weird about COVID, but that's not what we're doing. We didn't know what it was, so it added that fear factor. And there was nothing we could do about it. So there was that anxiety because we were told by Pennsylvania probation if we contact to see the status of our transferal, that they would violate me. And I did it anyway. So it took a long time. I think I'm just now getting decompressed over that trauma, if we're being honest. That took a while. But so good to be out of the shadows. It was weird for me because we took pictures of weed. It was on a Polaroid. You didn't share that shit with anybody. Now everyone's like, duck face, selfie, look at, here's the crop. So that was weird. And there was even when legal, some paranoia from Pat posting stuff. It was alien to me.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
really legal, man.
Man, the place that I live, man, it's not. It's still like you said. Nobody takes selfies with those things.
Oh my God.
No,
Gabby
no,
was telling me
no,
you can
no.
grow a plant of flower, but you can't.
Yeah, it's like the facility where I have my library. Yeah, it's in Austria, and Austria has a law that is written like this. The delta 9 THC is the drug, which is forbidden, of course, right? It's the drug, right? So, but cannabis is not a drug. It's a plant. And they have in law, they have written down that the plant itself is not a drug until it's not producing the substance, you know? You know what I mean? Yeah, so after, and the action of cutting a bud from the plant is producing drugs, not growing it, you know? So actually, if you don't, if you would not have anything, no dry flowers at home, and then you have a police raid, you have a flowering plant outside your house, nobody would actually, I mean, the judge would free you in the end, actually, because you are not producing drugs. It's aromatherapy, you would claim, you know. It's very, very different, right? I mean, the system works like this. The government has taxes from that. You can sell it as a producer as an ornamental plant, cannabis ornamental plants, which I, as a producer, sell to other shops too, and to many businesses. And for example, I've been contacted by Swiss pharmaceutical company just a few weeks ago who have a license to produce high THC potent flowers. And also there is in Germany this kind of companies for years already, which I contacted me. But now in Germany is a legal market. You can sell to a private grower. So, you know, but still it is only opening up right now. You know, you talk about something that will be here in 10 years maybe, you know.
Always the hurdles and bureaucratic
Yes.
red tape. I think it's time to free the weed, and anyone being persecuted for it is a victim of crime. It's just, it's tragic, and it still feels like, and it sounds like it's still prohibition era for Austria.
It's so that sounds so convoluted.
Yeah. It is like a little bit of taboo. Everybody knows about it, and nobody's really giving a shit about it in that sense. Like until you're caught, and when they are caught,
then,
you know, like I as a producer, when somebody comes to me and buys 5 plants, and he goes out of my shop, and I give him the bill, that means I sold you the car, yeah. So I'm a car seller. So you have to be 18 years old. You have to have a permit for driving, and so you buy this car and you drive away. You make an accident, and who is now? You know, I mean, you're the one who is responsible, not me. You know, I just sold you the plants, and on the bill is written that you have to keep it on 18 hours of lights. That means that you keep it under vegetation, that it's not producing drugs. You know, that is written on the bill. Yeah. It's ornamental, you know?
Yeah, and so in essence, that's a waiver of relief.
Yeah.
A waiver of relief of responsibility.
Yeah.
Wow, well, at least it's a glimmer of hope headed in the right direction. Unfortunately, my only experience with a gentleman that was in Austria looked like this. We got all the bells and whistles for a very large seed order. We did the insurance. We did the expedited delivery. And I think that was counterproductive because it drew more attention, and it was flagged in Austria, and it didn't get through, but it was never any official thing from them other than they could do nothing for us. So it was a huge order. What I did in good faith was I took the loss on it just to get them there. He had a friend in Chicago who was receiving the seeds, and then however he was getting them to Austria ended up happening. But yeah, that's reinforcing how tight it is there, because it was listed as art supplies, and they allowed us to have another claim again to try to get it back, and we haven't heard anything about it. So I'm hoping they got them there, because we were super pumped about getting some of our strains to Austria.
Yeah, actually, it's the system is there, and I think I already talked about it in the last podcast, how the system here works, and it will be from year to year easier to do it, because many other countries will now decriminalize. If I say Germany legalized, it's wrong. Actually, they decriminalized it right now.
Always with the jargon.
Yeah, it's not legalization. It's just like, you know, it's really still really strict, you know. But they can grow now at home, which they couldn't before, and you know that's a really big difference, right? I mean,
it's a ray of light. Anyway, it's headed in the right direction.
You know, like
the fact that you can ship to Germany is amazing.
Yeah, For example, it is crazy for me when Gaby told me that you cannot ship between states, in America, the clones. That is crazy.
Well, you
know?
We can
can.
ship
You
ship
can.
tissue cultures worldwide if they're under a certain height because it's considered hemp, considered 0.3.
Saying that if it doesn't flower, it has drugs.
Yeah.
So there's a loophole in the farm bill here where if it doesn't contain THC, it's considered hemp. And so clones can be shipped everywhere through the country. What I was telling you was it was something about a licensed cannabis nursery is not allowed to sell clones to the public. They're only allowed to sell clones to a cultivator or a distributor that then grows it, or to a dispensary which then could sell to the public.
But for example, the generation zero clones that you're producing, right? With a Grateful Head LCC company now, this will be certified. For example, for my facility, I have a passport. Also, I'm under watch of the Food and Drug Administration to do an import of that because you already have it from tissue culture, meristemic. You have it from, it's a Gen 0, so it's a little bit acclimatized, as I think, but it still needs care, but it can be shipped in one day, This can go through. It's like, this is also a signal to all Europe now for this, that Generation 0 is the next big thing. And also because we can trust,
Can you describe Generation 0?
I am not claiming to be super well versed. I know enough to be dangerous, but I think probably Sasha could describe exactly in proper context what net zero is. I don't claim to be an expert in tissue culture protocol.
No, I'm not an expert too. Maybe Cosmic would tell the story now if he's here.
But I don't think he's here. I mean, basically, Gen 0 means it's the first generation that's come out of in vitro.
The meristem culture.
Yeah,
got it. That's
the meristem culture has to be there for a long time, right? I mean, I heard some podcasts that the meristem should be like at least 2 years in meristem. No meristem nodal, again meristem nodal in this form. And then after these 2 years, it should be introduced out because viruses or this kind of pathogens, they cannot survive that kind long time as a parasitic element in the plant, right? I mean, if you have it for 2 years in the chamber and repeat the process and have it in, and then introducing it as first time, from meristem to nodal, from nodal to rooting, and from rooting to a hardening phase where the Gen 0 becomes the Gen 0 clone. It starts to grow a little bit. You acclimatize it. First you need hoods, then you need without hoods. I mean, Gaby says you don't need hoods, but it's like just the acclimate as you would do traditional mother plant cuttings. You start with the hoods and then you acclimatize it. And then you put it under the stronger lights, and then after weeks, and from these plants, from Generation 0 plants, if somebody has a little lab, can do mother plants quick and make nodal cuts. So you have nodal already from those kind of plants, and you still keep it in your library. That is the big thing. The idea that for me would be so interesting. I would definitely buy this kind of genetics in the future from.
Yeah. Yep.
Home grower will make a mom, and will keep it really clean, and he will never get any diseases. Then never. Let me say it's a good start. It's better start than we have now.
And the other thing is I have a personal relationship. My very best friend designed one of the first modular TC labs that he's making available, and he's working out of the University of Tennessee tissue culture program. So if there's any synergy there, that's going to be a worldwide operation. Building these modular labs.
I need his phone number, bro.
Well, we can make this happen. Yeah. He's my very best friend. He co-signed for the people he's working with, and he's working with two PhDs in their lab out of the University of Tennessee. They got some grant money. They're a very, very gifted staff, and they're giving me a crash education in it. I claim to have rudimentary knowledge of what it does, but I think the important thing about the F-Zero clones to mention is there will be restored vigor with the older cuts. It will do away with a lot of the genetic drift. It will do away with the full panel of pathogens and viroids, and that's something really important because HLVD, Fusarium, Mosaic tobacco are starting to run rampant in our industry. And that being said, I think mother rooms are going to be obsolete within 5 to 8 years. And I think the thing that we're going to start seeing next is cryogenic storage, where we can store millions of plantlets at scale in a very small area. I think that that's going to eventually make mother rooms obsolete because, as we know,
Has your company been able to take like meristematic tissue culture or other tissue culture out of cryogenic freeze?
The company that I'm working with, Grateful Heads, I can't speak on because I just have an introductory to their scientist who's doing it. That the other company where my friend is building labs for them has. They also can and haven't delve into another controversial topic, which is CRISPR editing, because there's another misconception about that technology. I'm not an advocate of it, nor am I opposed to it. It's still discovery for me. But there's a common misconception that it's GMO, and it's not, because if you understand the simple concept of GMO, it's introducing a foreign entity to an already existing cellular structure. So when we're talking about CRISPR, CRISPR is, in essence, just a giant pair of molecular scissors that's adding the same organical plant material from within the plant source that it was derived from. So they're doing stuff there. I haven't done anything with my cannabis genetics there. I'm a brand ambassador for their CBD product, but any of their lab services there are offered to me, so, and there's not really a conflict of interest because my genetics are going to Grateful Heads. That's a separate entity in itself.
Yeah, talk about Grateful Heads.
Super excited to be on there, man. And I'll be totally honest, a lot of the guys that are on the board, not illegal, they're like distant superheroes to me that you'd see and be like, wow, that's so awesome they're doing that. So like my cheeks are still getting flushed just talking about it because I'm blown away and honored to be part of them. Kevin Jodry, Skunk VA, Craft Medical, everyone on the staff is great. And I think it's Steve at Craft Medical did a great job picking the team because there's people that may not have a lot of followers that don't get the exposure but have a certain talent he liked. He kind of handpicked a good group, and we get together for Google Zoom meets, try to get together a couple times a month and just get our heads together. So I like the fact they're not all high profile people. I think that means a lot because we're going to build each other, on that platform.
Awesome.
And regarding my own genetic material, I'm going to be introducing them probably January 15th. And I can't believe I can't remember. My brain is over inundated with information
I was
right now.
looking at your list this morning.
You saw what I posted? Yeah, you can run through that without getting off the phone. That's just the start of what I'm going to incorporate. I have a good bit of other things. And it's also important to mention, we're on the topic of Dutch genetics. Over the years and being in Amsterdam, I was able to forge some friendships with some of the breeders there. Some old feedstock from some people that are retired. And that leads me into the next conversation where I think embryo rescue protocol will be a thing as well. And to get some of these, long lost cultivars back to where they should be. Jacques from Homegrown Fantasies retired recently, and he gifted me all his remaining stock. We have the original Misty, which is one of my all-time favorites. We have his cheese, which won the Cannabis Cup, the Homegrown Fantasies cheese. There's Super Crystal and a few others. White Widow. We have those. I'm not sure of the viability, but I think I'm going to save those. And also, from Flying Dutchman. I got a lot of their old remaining stock.
Yes.
I have Aurora Borealis. I have God, why can't I remember it now? Pot of Gold, which I
Nice.
have as a mother plant and seed line separate from the older stock. The real McCoy, that's the one I'm most excited about. We have that. And a lot of people, the early breeders, used that same Hawaiian cut for a lot of successful things. I think Thelma was one of them off the top of my head. And I think Sensi may have used that Hawaiian indica in some of their crosses that makes up the real McCoy. So I'm excited to see what we can do, because you got to remember, if the seed doesn't pop, it doesn't mean the cell embryo is dead. And, you know, you can run them through that protocol to regenerate them.
Some little primitive way would be using gibberellic acid, right?
With
Soak,
Dave
soak,
from
soak, yeah, soak the
exactly.
seeds. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dave Pope, AK Bean Brains, gave me the recipe for that, but I've been afraid to do it.
You have
And
to have
that's
the
a-
right ppm, in the water. You soak the
You
seed
do.
in. Yeah. Yeah, if it's too high, the ppm of it, then I think there is one guy called Vader on YouTube. He has this this seed company. He's like having a YouTube channel for years already. Vader OG is his name of the channel, and he's said it few years ago and he made an experiment also. And you have it on YouTube. He has the right ppm. He has 3 cups with old seeds, like 20 years old seeds, and first cup, second cup, third cup are with different ppms. The third cup is without gibberellic acid, and it's also the lowest rate of sprouting. And the first 2 were sprouting really good, actually. 20-year-old seeds, and he has gibberellic acid in form of crystals, which he adds. I have it at home in the form of liquid.
Do you
But
know
I
what
don't
parts
know
per million he was using?
you can go. I don't know from the head. If I will say something now, it will be wrong. But it's Vader OG, and Vader, he's named of the breeder, and he's having Ocean Grown is his company. Ocean Grown, yeah.
Very good information. I'll keep that on the back burner. And for some reason, it struck me that Great Dallas, DALAS, I'm not sure if you're friendly with him online. He's doing some home TC stuff like you are, and him being from Spain, you all might have some connectivity if you're
I
not
know
following him.
I think I know him. Yeah.
You get dude. He's very informative about a lot of things, and he's like us in the fact that he's doing resurrection with old seeds from old Dutch vendors.
He's a friend of my very good friend from Barcelona, the old school genetics guys. And actually,
Yeah,
he's
Tim,
one.
that's the one. Yeah.
He's one of the crew members of old school genetics, and he's really into sativas, He's
I'm
really.
about to break in the verse of it's a real
Yeah,
quick.
it is really, man. I see him every year, in March. We go to Barcelona, and Old School has a booth where they sell Karma Genetics, Old School Genetics, and Lucky Dog seeds, from Skunk VA, the gear, That's where I get my gear from Lucky VA, from Skunk VA, it's like
He's Grateful Heads. I can't
he's
believe I'm
Grateful
still
Head.
working with that guy.
Yeah. Actually, the world is so small, But the guy, Great Dallas, like you told, this is a guy, man. It's like he's really, really like into it, You meet these kind of people like we are now on the podcast, like who are so into it. But that's why Barcelona for me is like the only place where I can go that I meet like-minded people in person. Because otherwise you cannot meet in person. We can meet online now, like we do. But the world is so small. But actually, we have points where we can meet. It's crazy. I
The
wait.
camaraderie, I feel, is what's needed again, instead of people concerned with what everybody else is doing and all that stuff. I feel like if you're honest and you grind hard and you're consistent, everybody has their own lane. There shouldn't be a competitive vibe. If you're talented, there's enough for everybody to eat out there.
Yes.
And it's so much easier. I get so mad. I don't engage in public drama. It hurts my heart. Even some high-profile people, you'll see engaging in online drama about a strain or about this and that. And even if you're right, that's going to be off-putting to a potential friend or an end user. So I just stay away from it, man.
Yeah, the best thing is to be quiet about it, and you don't need the drama. And
No.
you don't have the time in life for this drama because you have so much work, right? With the plants, man. I mean, there is so much work to do. Even now that we are on the podcast, man, it is in the night now here, but actually we do in the day, like your time now. I would have to go to the facility, man. I would be like, guys, I still have 10 minutes. I have to go. Because you know what I mean. This is my life. This is like my babies. Everybody of us feel like this. I hope so. I mean, I see it.
It's all day, man. And the one thing that struck me that I think is helping our business model work out is a lot of these top breeders, you may grow their stuff for years and they're not really accessible. And by all means, everybody operates differently. It's by all means enough on everybody. And it struck me, if I'm ever going to do this, I'm going to answer my phone. I'm going to answer every single message I can. Even if it's a redundant question from a noob who's just starting out, that could be the most important question you're asked all day. And you bet your ass if I can get back to everybody, even if I'm ready to pull my hair out, I'm going to do that because I think the human interactive part is really good. And I think actually giving a shit enough to take the time goes a long way as a successful business model. It's pretty much business 101.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to do just that. When I get a message on Instagram or on YouTube, I try to respond to it quickly. But I also do understand, like Not So Dog. I was talking to someone about Not So Dog yesterday, and they were like, well, he used to answer my messages, and now he doesn't. I don't know if there's something wrong. And I said, you know how many messages this guy gets?
Yeah.
Oh, no, folks,
like,
if anybody
mean,
tries...
like, he has other responsibilities. It's not like take it personal or something. It's just, realistically, after a while, it becomes overwhelming. So for now, while I can do it, I try to do it. And what's great is that's how I met Sasha. That's how I'm meeting other great people. And another great thing for me about this podcast is I feel like I'm making friends. And that's priceless.
That's super important. I can't emphasize the importance of that enough because it's kind of lost out there. Everyone thinks they're competing.
Yeah.
And I just see people competing with themselves and their own egos. There's really, and the way I perceive life, and I always have, is there is no competition. Competition's a mental limitation because check it out. There's always somebody that's going to be bigger, better, and faster than you. So learn from the best and make it your own. That's always the way I live my life, pretty much.
Well, you want to compete with yourself.
So that, go ahead, Gary.
You want to compete with yourself.
Exactly.
With your mind telling you that you can't do it.
Yep.
Yeah, with your mind saying that you can't do it. My lady, she works out a lot. She tries to go to the gym every day. I'm wearing
gym rats for life, dude. Every day, man.
I'm trying, but I'm too busy. This is my lady's gym, and they had like a competition. First of all, so I'm going to change the subject for a minute just for some lighthearted stuff. But
do it.
So my lady goes to the gym every day. I try to go. I can't go as often. And this gym is kind of geared towards women. Okay. It's like, mostly women that go there, but, guys are allowed. And so I go there with them and they have this competition. Like it's like an actual weightlifting competition where they're doing all this different stuff. And, they asked me if I want to do it. And the first answer is there's no way I want to do it because these women at this gym are fucking badasses. They're all like, so like it would just be. And the other thing is the only person that I want to compete with is myself.
Right.
Like I just want to do better and I want to lose some weight, maybe pack on a little bit of muscle, but mostly lose my gut. So I'm competing with myself. When I go to the gym, I'm not looking at like what the max weight that somebody else can bench press is or anything like that. What I'm looking at is, you know, how much more can I do this time, you know, to push myself to be better. And so that's why I said, like, I like competing with myself.
Yeah, well, real quick on that topic. I being sedentary and being on probation and not having a license because they take their license. When I moved to Oklahoma, I'd always stayed lean, you know, and just from being
COVID.
active. So
Everyone got factor on COVID.
Dude, I walked around at 199. I'm 6'4", and 3 years later in Oklahoma, I got up to 254. I put on much weight, and this year I lost it all, and I got muscular again. I didn't think it was possible. My blood pressure went up. I got scared. I think that's what made me do it. And I dropped 54 pounds, and the main thing that made the weight shed off and lose my stomach, and I have a 4-pack. I can't believe it. I'm not going to show anybody. That's just tacky. But anyway, I'm doing it now. Which is the reason I'm bringing it up, is I fast every Monday. I go to bed, you know, very early. I go to bed at 8 o'clock every night. I'm up at 4 with the plant. And every Monday I fast. I don't eat until 7 o'clock on Monday. And that's, you know, over 24 hours. And then my meal's usually something very light. It's fruit or something. And that helps. If you really want to get into it, it's super hard because you're going to get irritable when you do it. You might even have cramps or anything. But we consume as humans far more calories than we need. And I really didn't figure it out until I got into fasting. So we'll end on that note. And I applaud you for your health journey because our trip is short.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you know, the older you get, the more you feel the body needs something else, you know. I mean, the culture here in my country is we eat quite a lot of meat, right? I mean, also a lot of vegetables because we grow our own food. The quality of that food is quite high, you know. But in the last, 20 years, of course, there is a lot of supermarkets and, the food gets lower quality. So people lost, it is also cheaper. So now people lost the feeling that you need to buy from a farmer, somebody that is local here. The food is not being driven from far places to your table, right? I mean, the best thing is if you have all the food, if you can, from your local environment, which is like radius of 100 kilometers, that is great because it means people who do that, also we wheat people, I say, cannabis people, when we do our end product, the thing that is for us still here illegal to do, but when I do my clones, I want to be them the A quality, A quality, as I can do it, I will not send them to Germany to a home grower if there is not really the best clone I can send to him. I rather, if I have older clones that is, not the higher score, I rather say, hey, I wait for the next round of the cut, just to have the best quality, because the word spreads around. If you are spreading, your company will rise if you advertise through your product, not through advertisement, naked woman, or you know what I mean? That is not the way you should advertise weed, because cannabis people like the truth, we like the truth. So
there's so much truth to that, and presentations, everything. And if you care about yourself and you run a clean show, that'll be felt and appreciated by the end users.
There's something else I can add to that is, I remember when I opened up the Garden Spout, my grow shop, and within days of opening up my store, we got a visit from the only other place in town that you could buy any grow stuff. Okay, so I opened up the first indoor grow shop, but there was a store, and it still exists, called Spare Time Supply. And Spare Time Supply, they sold soil and pots and fertilizer, all kinds of fertilizer, okay? And then in a ocean container in the back, they had grow lights. So it was like a regular nursery, but it was in Mendocino County, right? So the clients there wanted to buy stuff to grow weed in, but they try to keep it like low key, right? When I opened up my store, and my store was based for the indoor grower, I had grow lights in the window shining up the highway. Like you couldn't drive through Willits without seeing high pressure sodium lights. So I quickly got a visit from the son of the store owner. And at first I didn't know who he was, and he's just asking me some questions, and I'm all excited. I got my store open. And he says, well, my name is Mike. I'm from Spare Time Supply, and we're going to put you out of business. Okay?
Oh, and fighting words.
Right. He felt very threatened by it.
Cool.
But, you know, he didn't put me out of business. And, you know, they had a wholesale company too. And eventually they started selling me stuff. It's like selling me the soil, because I could buy it from someone else, but they were local and it was easy. I could just pick it up instead of having pallets of soil delivered. So it was cheaper. And, you know, I think eventually they realized, yeah, you know, he's taking some of our business, but he's also bringing me some business. And, you know, what they realized is they had to step up their game. Okay, like if they wanted to market to the indoor growers, they had to take the shit out of the ocean container in the back. And they did. You know, at that point, they had the grow lights right up front and center, and they even grew some plants. And so, like, I feel like I had a positive influence even on them, right? And then other stores started to pop up. And honestly, a few of them were like my former clients. The two bigger stores that opened up, these guys used to be my clients. But, you know, I remembered the Spare Time thing, them coming to my store and threatening me, right? And, you know, when they told me they were doing it, I was like, well, congratulations, you know, like let's go into this as friendly competition. Okay, let's both try to make each other do a better job. We don't want the bad type of competition where the customer can work us against each other, right? You know, so like he would call me up and say, hey, this guy says you're selling him the lights for $400. Is that true? And I'd say, yeah. And he'd say, okay, I'm just going to match the price. That's what we would do. Like we wouldn't beat the other guy's price. We'd match the price. And so if you want to shop with me because you appreciate the service that I'm doing, then you shop with me. If you want to shop with him, you can shop with him, but it's not going to be about price. And, you know,
well, good. There's something to be said for that.
As it could. But the whole idea, I think what I was trying to get at is when we were talking about competition, okay, competition can make you elevate your game and not be lazy, you know? So competition can be a good thing if you're not lazy. Now,
that's a good point.
I do want to say that there can be bad competition too, okay? Eventually what happened here was there was some big corporate-owned grow shops that owned like tons of grow shops throughout the country. And what they did was they started targeting areas, and they sold products for like cheaper than I could get it for, certainly cheaper than what I could sell it for. And, you know, they put basically all the independently owned grow shops out of business. So what I want to say is there's good competition and there's bad competition, you know, but overall, you should always try to make the competition make you elevate your game.
Fact.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
And it's good you had a healthy camaraderie amidst the competitive nature. That's good that you turned it around, you know?
That's what I love about the Grateful Head project, you know, that so many great heads came together.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
so
thing,
exciting.
you know, that's the thing. I think this is the game changer now, globally, because you have to understand, not only for you, this is a new thing because you are a part of it now, but in Europe and all around the world, people know about it. Like in South Africa is a legal market. In Uruguay is a legal market. In, many parts of the world already there is legal market, and they will want to have these genetics. For somebody to have like a true cut of KMD, from Europe or South Africa, this is like, whoa, this is for us. Because I don't know anybody that would have a true KMD cut, We have
I do.
KMD hybrids, you have, yeah? Because I see.
Ed, Soma's lavender, I can tell you the backstory on those. That came from a gentleman in Yuba City, California, who got 90 Soma stock, and he did a pheno hunt, and he selected that cut from the best 23 females that he got from that stock. And that's what I know about the backstory of that. And I can tell you a little bit about the plant. I can tell you a little bit about the plant. The lavender cut has floral lavender terps with a back end that's not unlike real opium if you've ever experienced it. So the first initial hit to the palate would be like lavender aromatherapy, and then that gives way to something a little more complex, which is a spice not unlike opium. And that plant is finished in no later than 63 days. I've grown 2-3 foot long Louisville sluggers in really bad seasons outside without a speck of mold. It outcrosses like a champ. The branches on it, it's a very tight to itself plant, so it needs topping, but the branches on it are like lumber. It's absolutely insane. Prehistoric fans, very tight internodal growth, and
Yes.
It's more potent than the named purple cuts that I've encountered, which would be Mother of Berry, Granddaddy Purple, Purple Urkel. None of them are slouches in the potency department, but I think there's higher linalool count in my lavender cut, and that's the other thing about it. That and the outcrosses are my wife and I's go-to for anxiety and for sleep. And not to be too graphic, but I've heard reports that it's good for women's monthly woes as well.
Yeah.
This sounds a lot like the lavender that Mad Farmer uses. Is it the same cut?
No, I have a lot of respect for him. It looks along the same lines, but it's definitely not the same cut, different sources. Shout out to Mad Family. Good people.
Absolutely.
I think they're in Oklahoma now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so that's a little about that. Well, let's see how bad my memory is. So the next one, I have Pot of Gold Mother from Feed Pop of old stock, which would make it an F3. I have that mother. And then I have a 90 stock clone that somebody was kind enough to gift to me. So there's two different things there. I'll go down them, and when my memory doesn't serve me, how about you ad lib? I'll go down the ones I remember. All right, so. Pot of Gold is from 90 stock Flying Dutchman. It's skunk 1 times Hindu Kush, and that's a plant that finishes in about 63 days, and it makes dense golf ball type structure up the plant. And the terps I would describe as a skunk family in an apple orchard. It's got very mentholated notes to it. It's almost like the first toke off a bowl is almost like a Thin Mint. I'm not going to say cookies, but it has that mentholated mouthfeel to it. And then as you exhale, it's like burnt rubber intermingling with skunk with the back note of apple on it. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's funny, I bet a lot of these, if there were COAs, would not test very high, but as far as potency, 3-toke potency, I put the pipe down. I think it's definitely comparable to some of these high THC test things. So that's the other one. The GT4 cut came from an IC Mag thread. It came directly from Josie. May he rest in peace. I'm not sure. We're on the fence introducing. So if Steve, you see this and spoke out of line, my apologies, because we're still figuring out exactly what we're running, but I know most of that list is going to be available soon. The Sugar Puss came from my favorite sour cut in the industry. I know it's a hot topic. That cut came from Mr. Bob Hempel. And the cookies in that lineage, I'm not a huge cookies fan, but I like them in outcrosses, and I kind of validate them by hitting them with old school stuff. I have a few exceptions I make for that. Nothing against them at all. It's just personal preference, but there's some goodness there as a chassis for me. I look at it as kind of like a blank canvas. So the sugar puts that's on there is Mr. Bob Hemphill's sour cut times bag feed male that was found in an official cookies drop a while back. So that's pretty much that one. And that's a great plant because it's got the gas sour terps with the fresh bakery stuff in there, and it's a banger. It yields heavy. Checked all the boxes.
Like I said, I was looking at your list of your strains, not the Grateful Head one.
Well, I have a
have
question about
Go ahead.
like the Grateful Heads. So I am ignorant actually. Is this a like a clone like you're providing genetics and are planning on doing it globally, or I'm
It
I'm actually a
it's
little bit not informed.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I should have done the intro. The Grateful Head is a collective of breeders and geneticists who have access to a lab. We are offering F0 gen clones on a global platform. Steve at Kraft Medical's the CEO, along with Kevin Jodry as a majority shareholder, Dutch Blooms and Skunk VA. And then the minority shareholders are breeders and geneticists, such as myself. I can't remember them all. Mass Made on IG, Fire in the Hole Genetics, All-Star Clone from Southern California is in there, and I can't remember. There's 16 of them, so
Okay.
God help me. I definitely
Wow. It will be a
can't
global
remember.
library, yes? A real
Yeah,
library for global
and the main
repository.
And the main point about them is provenance, chain of custody is ass tight. So if you're wanting to get the real Chem 91 or the real lavender, they don't play around, obviously. So any genetic material that's introduced, we have to go through a very, very vigorous background, to the nth degree before it's even contemplated. So it's exciting for me and to worry about getting one or a hybrid of something that isn't there. When you know that you're getting that through us, you're getting the real Chem 91 from the man himself, or the real Chem D, or the real Pot of Gold, the real lavender, and that's exciting to me because nothing against anyone. I see so many knockoffs. I see S1s. I see fake cuts. I just don't even comment anymore. It's not worth it.
And is
Yeah,
this
a lot of
already
people tell
available
me they
to
have.
the community, or is this something that's coming available?
Regarding my genetic material, I will be introducing it to the lab and for testing January 15th or before. So sometime, however long the TC protocol takes, mine will be introduced. But we already have live drops going, and you can find out more about that on the Grateful Heads or Dutch Blooms page, where I think there's a sticky thread with everybody mentioned on there.
Okay, very cool.
Mhm.
And so do you still have a cultivation facility of your own in Oklahoma, or have you like kind of dedicated that space to these other projects, or?
That's a really good question. We moved and downsized a little bit only because I didn't need acreage, and our business model is only set up for my wife and I, which shout out to my lovely wife because she keeps my mother room on fleek, and she is my queen of logistics. Without her, it'd probably be messy. So thank God for her. So,
For sure.
uh, we downsized a little bit. I have a half an acre for outdoor, which is all I need for my purposes, and I have a 30 by 20 40 lighter here as well. And then the rest of my home and garage is set up as a drying room and testing area where we keep the mother room and where I test everything before I let it out.
Cool.
But I think because of the way things are headed, that commercial flower, it's a race to the bottom. I'm focusing on seed increases and maintaining my mother's stock and testing my new drops because there needs to be more transparency, I think, from in general with testing. So I like to post the males. I like to post the testing, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and get it out there. So you get what I would think is a product I can put my name on, pretty much.
For sure. And so are you using that 40 lighter to do all the the pheno hunting and whatnot?
Yes and no. Right now, I'm using my home, which has an ample enough setup, but I don't think it's going to justify not having a commercial license firing that up with the overhead and everything. At least not for now, but that's always there. I do things backwards from a lot of breeders because my thing is, who wants a great plant that does great indoors commercially, produce it for somebody, but falls apart when it's outside? So we have no plant count here. So I'm the opposite. I do my testing outside first. I make my selections based on the most vigorous plants that don't show septoria, powdery mildew, or botrytis. Then I bring them inside and test them, which is probably the opposite of what a lot of people do, I think.
Isn't Oklahoma Hurricane Alley or Tornado Alley?
It's shifted in the past 3 years if you follow any of that. And we're not in the area that's dry, barren, and dusty that gets that. We're actually in a groovy little place that's Zone 7B, and we're in the foothills of the Ozarks in southeast Oklahoma near the Arkansas border. It's just such a great outdoor growing climate that I can't even believe that we can produce the quality of the outdoor flower because it never rains here in the fall. It's dry, so we get a lot of the outdoor, that looks like indoor.
Wow.
Not even greenhouse?
No,
Light deprivation.
no.
That's awesome.
Just full sun.
Full sun, and that does require vigilant IPM, but like I said, it took a lot of learning curve to get the climate down and to know what works and what doesn't work. And I'm really happy to say that we might have had maximum of the outdoor harvest less than 8% loss. Because
Wow.
even if it doesn't rain here, you're still going to get botrytis with certain super thick cultivars, and especially if you get budworms. I mean, even without rain, that'll cause mold. So the very few little bits were from the budworms. That's a big battle here, and that requires they get immune to Bacillus thuringiensis here. So I alternate with other things like Dipel that are all safe organic from the same company and whatnot. It takes that and getting underneath the plants, looking under, it's time consuming, but it's what it takes to make good flower here in this state. And it's funny, some of the cultivars I've had COAs done from indoor of the same strain and outdoor. It's always higher. Not that I'm a huge advocate of judging weed on THC content, but terpene content and THC always seems higher with sun-grown than the COAs from the same strain run indoors.
It's the full spectrum. I mean, full spectrum, we always say this term, but it's the absolute light. You know what I mean? It's the planet sun, it's not the planet, it's a sun. All the other planets are around it, like we are circulating around the sun, right? So it's like, this is it, the base of life, is
Well,
every plant you see, you've been growing up in a countryside, right? Because you talk about the farm as you were a kid, right? Plants from beginning. This is something you observe. They are around you all your life in the beginning. You don't really realize this. You don't really, because you are interested in other stuff first, and then actually it comes behind you. And then if you catch the flow, you do it. Because with weed, actually, what you told the story is very similar to mine also. Like, not the other drama you told, but because I live in another place, but, from the perspective, how you look to the plant. And now from breeding perspective would be, I think that after I read the Mendel, from the 19th
Mendel's
century,
law.
Mendel, the first and the second and the third rule of Mendel, he actually did it on tulps and fish, and he breed with other stuff, not cannabis, right? But he actually was like a guy that could see the code in the living organisms, how it behaves. The F1 generation from through two very far away parents will be a very good hybrid, yeah. And then from that hybrid, if you go to F2 in the filial line, you will have like the whole picture of colors. Now choose one color that you like, right? And go that way, because then in the F3 you will end up with more of that color. You know what I mean? Yeah, that is with
Real-
tomatoes and any other vegetables, right?
Real quick on that F2, that is where a lot of the gems are to be found. And a prime example as you're going through line breeding is there are some jewels that can be unlocked. I look at it kind of like opening up the final phase in the video game. For example, I have Super Lemon Haze times A5 tie, and I'm running through the F2s to make my increase, which I'm going to have soon. And I found a recessive trait, broadleaf, that looked like none of them, and it smelled like lemon gasoline. My mind was so blown, and I thank God I cloned it, and I ended up pollinating it. And because it's so far away from the goal target of what I want with my release, which is jagged, sawtooth, serration tie-looking plant, that I'm not releasing it, but I'm keeping that clone for R&D. So my point being is, a lot of end users, like seed buyers, shy away from the F2s. I think there's always the potential to unlock a recessive trait that you might not see getting to the F6 generation, which would by in turn be a pure breeding line or an IBL.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I did a little I did a little breeding with a grape ape Sensi star mother and or a grape ape Sensi star father and a runts mother, and then when I got that to the F2 generation, I was getting these two major different like structural phenotypes of like one being super short and squat like the grape ape, and then one being really tall and stretchy. And the tall and stretchy one, I found one where it was just like all grape, and it was really pleasant to find that, because all the small ones were very grapey, but then all the tall ones had that sort of spicy, earthiness of like kind of some of the older purples and a little bit of what I remember Sensi Star being. But yeah, it was really cool.
I hope you cloned her. Did you clone the unusual
I did, and
phenotype?
then I moved and I lost everything, but I still have probably like a couple thousand of the F2 seeds, so I can hunt through those whenever.
Yeah, everybody has the one that got away story, but this year, because there's so many times when I've grown it out and was like, God, I can't re-veg it. Why didn't I clone that? And yeah, this year I got two that I think I'm really, really, really happy that I saved. And one was a volunteer that came up out of my compost pile, and it reeked in veg. And I'm like, what the hell's that? I didn't even, and I had to backtrack to what soil I put in the pile last from that run to get a rough assimilation of what the parents were. And I remember I ran lemon tree and Gorilla Glue 4, and the plant that came out of it, I grew it outside. You can see it back on my Instagram feed. Is louder than the lemon tree and it's so resinous, it's insane. It was a very skimpy producer, but then again, I started it late outside, so I'm running that indoors for R&D too. But people, if you get an inkling and you have a plant, even if it's an early veg, and you can house it, trust your gut instinct, because a lot of y'all are watching this have been around plants long enough that you can learn to trust your gut instinct, even when the plant's at its fourth node, that it's going to be special. So what I'm saying is, don't have regrets like all of us have, and clone it if you think you're onto something.
And don't throw
Yeah.
the runts away either, because those always end up being the best.
OGKB has entered the conversation.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's like the weirdest, curliest leaf looking motherfucker, and then it's just not growing like anything else, and then it turns out to be just like the best smoke.
Dude, I'm the worst at culling everything. When I see people a lot of times be like, well, we had all these beauty and I got rid of them. And I'm crying on the inside, because some of those mutants are worth the wait, and they'll grow out of their stunted trait or whatever's wrong with them and develop into amazing plants, man.
I'm just thinking like,
I wish I could keep them all.
yeah, even like Mac 1,
Well, with tissue
that one in
culture,
veg is just terrible, because it takes forever to get a good clone mother off of it, and then it's like being overgrown by anything else that's around it, and
It hates pollen.
it hates pollen. Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
I was
I
able
have
to
the
get some
calves.
seeds off of that. Off
Some
of a
some
pollination
friends
project with
from
that and military chocolate dad, and I have to run those. I have them sitting somewhere.
I have the Caps frozen lemons, which is similar to that. Like it grows, and so you talk about the Mac 1, and this is another capulator strain. It grows so slow in veg. It takes a really long time till, it becomes a plant with decent enough structure that you want to flower it. But what's cool about it is that then when you flower it, it doesn't really stretch. And, like for indoor cultivators,
See a grain, baby.
Or multi-tier gardens, it's nice to be able to have a plant that doesn't want to have a big stretch. And it's super unique weed. It has a like jacky terp profile, not exactly jack, more like citrus than jack. But to me, it's a sativa that grows very much like an indica. So like nowadays, when people are wanting to grow sativas, you just can't do it. A plant that takes 14 or 16 weeks to flower, and gets 10 feet tall. So the Caps Frozen Lemons, Capulator put out some good stuff. I think the Caps Frozen Lemons, I prefer to the Mac 1. I'm not a big fan of the terp profile of the Mac 1. And the Caps Frozen Lemons, I think, is really nice.
That one. It sounds really good.
I'll have to get you.
Yeah, I respect Cap's work.
Yeah,
I remember him on THC Farmer posting back in the day before his shit blew off. He stuck with it. And I think that's a testament, because a lot of people out there in probably any walk of life or trade, if you keep doing what you're doing and really have passion in it, you push forward and you accept the failures, eventually something good's going to happen, like us sitting here talking together. If I would have gave up, I wouldn't even be here. And we, never even expected to be mildly successful. I'm not saying we're taking over the world, but it's really built. And I think that comes with taking the lumps and just never stopping. I think that's the best thing. And that goes to like beginner people that are starting out, beginning hobbyist growers, tent growers. You're going to mess up, share the mistakes, and you just keep doing it. And if you never stop and you're around for long enough, people are going to get tired of seeing you, and you're going to be successful, I think.
And also, I think, all the breeders, the small scale or even the big scale, for example, I will tell about Shanti again. Shanti Baba is one of those guys that still communicating with his, not only customers. You don't need to be a customer to ask him something, on his forum. But he's communicating with you on his forum, on the Mr. Nice Seeds forum. He has a forum. And Cap Capulator does the same thing. He has some basement, some
Bean
basement.
basement.
Yeah. I love this. These guys really are true breeders, true the caregivers. You can talk to them. Skunk VA has this. How is it? Reddit, no Reddit. It's Discord. Yeah, Discord. And Duke Diamond has the Discord, and you can reach those guys if you want to. I can
accessibility.
Accessibility. Yeah, that is great, and then you know that these guys actually really care for what they do, because they are accessible. They, it's not like always. Of
you
course,
can't fake the funk.
You can't fake the funk, man. No, and many others they are. Maybe DJ Short was a long time ago also accessible, not in that way but today he's a little older, I think, and I respect his work so much also, from a European perspective, because he's so odd. His genetics are not Dutch, He took his own genetics and bred them together, and still has this, I don't know much about him, rather than I've been waiting from the 90s to know who this guy is. And then in 2000 something, a YouTube video appeared with an interview with him. And I was like, whoa, man, this is a professor, like.
I've been around long enough to know that the Dutch banks that got his blueberry never paid him properly, unfortunately.
They never paid him properly. It is like they took his work and they never let him even select with them, And then they advertised it in the beginning as we were working with DJ Short. And after that, they put his name out. Today, you can just read about blue lines, We will not talk about, people can Google it, who it is and everything. But I'm actually, every time I see this, that people fucked somebody like so directly like that, I will always cherish the real one,
now that we're on that topic, I'm not going to get into the who, the how, but people out there, if you're a budding breeder or anything, you have to be really, really careful who you trust things with, because we're not going to delve on it, but I think there's some validity to this. Recently, a friend that had gained trust that asked me to acquire some genetics that were very rare and dear to me, which was pre-98 Cali Myth, Neville Taze, and Original Haze, the non-AG stuff that was sourced in Amsterdam by my friend Two Trees Farm, who used to own the gray area. Shout out to Two Trees on IG. And he got them for me, and I reluctantly told the friend the terms. He had wanted some haze genetics, and I said, look, I know you're stretched out thin, and I doubled down. I want to make sure that you can do the increase and do the selections for me. And very recently, this happened. In fact, the day before Thanksgiving, 6 months later, I didn't see a picture of them. No update, no selection done, and the guy just got really nasty. He said, they're dead, F you. So people, be careful, get everything in writing, document anything. If it's larger scale, get a lawyer to draw up some contents. We don't like necessarily the plant patenting thing, but it's still someone's intellectual property that meant something to them. And just be really, really wary of people, because a lot of people have this hippie moniker that they adapt, and then they use that as a mask to gain trust. And I think that's all I'm going to delve on that topic today, is just to be careful, man. It's my first nature to trust, and some people see that as a weakness, and there's a lesson learned in that.
Yeah,
Well,
capitalists are going to capitalize.
I want to say something to that, because you reminded me of an old story that isn't just cannabis. Or it's not about cannabis at all, actually. So first of all, you have to be careful, right? But what happens to a lot of people is they get burned and then they don't trust people at all, right? So you should be careful, but don't give up on the human race and don't give up on people. Right.
Yeah,
So my story, and I'll tell it quickly. I used to go eat at this Chinese restaurant like a couple of times a week. And this was when I lived in the country. I lived in Casadero, and the restaurant was in Santa Rosa. It was like 40
my wife
minutes
from near there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it was like 40 minutes away from where I live. And one day, and this was like pre-cell phones, I think. This is in the 90s. And I left home, and I left without my wallet. But I eat at this restaurant all the time. Yeah, I know the owner. And so I show up to the restaurant, and I tell the guy, it's like, hey, you know what? I ordered food to go, but I left my wallet at home. I said, can I pay you tomorrow? And he says, no. I say, why? And he says, because I've been burned too many times. And so I asked him, I said, what are you going to do with this food? He says, I'm going to throw it away. Oh. And I'm thinking to myself, man,
No
and
way.
I told him, I said, I feel so bad for you that you've lost trust in humanity to the point where you would rather throw it away than trust that someone is going to come back tomorrow and pay for the food. And what I want to say is, I believe you got to be careful, right? But it sucks that you got burned. You told me a little bit of the story yesterday. I've been burned. I have a situation where I've been burned by the same person twice, because I wanted to believe that they would do better, because maybe I believe in people too much, but I think you got to find the balance, right?
There's a fine line between being cautious and being cynical, and I'm not the type of person to be wired to be cynical. I'm very outgoing, and I love people. So I think it's just basically never gambling what you can't afford to lose while still being open to having trusting relationships. That's key. And if you
don't make some gambles, you ain't gonna get the big reward too. You just got to gamble with a small percentage of what your net worth, whether it's in cannabis or anything else.
For sure. It's
There's
like
so
friendship
much
requires trust, and trust requires vulnerability. So you gotta
There's
like
truth
open
to,
up.
there's so
That's
much
it
truth
right
to
there,
what he
Nick.
just said too,
Yeah.
because I've gotten to where I am today, which I'm not quite sure where that is other than Oklahoma, by not being afraid to be rejected. Like some of the higher profile people, higher status people, whether it be in music or theater or movies, you're never going to land the Hail Mary that you don't throw. And I've ended up in some places that I didn't think I would, and that's from being able to accept rejection. And it's kind of like a really weak analogy, and by no means misogynistic. If a guy hits on 10 beautiful girls, one of them is going to go out with him. You know what I mean? So you got to gamble sometimes in life, because you're never going to land that Hail Mary if you don't throw it. Validating what you said.
I want Nick to repeat what he said, because I feel like we were talking over him, and it was a nugget that should be made.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
Go ahead, Nick. That was me. I think I talked over him.
No, I mean, it was off the cuff, and I've been smoking, so you're not going to get it out of me again. You're going to have to look back through that.
All right, cool. All righty. I think that's
Hey,
even
1
better.
second. Speaking of smoking, I'm going to yell to my my beautiful wife to bring me a bowl, because it's not near me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I vape soft.
Well, I remember what I had said before. So it's friendship
Okay, let's
requires
hear it.
trust, and trust requires vulnerability. So
That's true.
you have to open up to be vulnerable.
It's true.
That
Like
is so true.
me and Sasha. Hold on, let me see this, Sasha.
What I can add to it now is like I've been traveling a lot, which I told in the last 2 podcasts a little bit about it. And you then, when you travel through different countries, different cultures, really, really far away from your home, where you used to be in your culture, then normally it's also you have to accept the difference. It's really also, and then you develop a sense of somebody that you look in the eye directly and can sense if he wants something bad or not. I mean, I've been traveling through all of Asia almost. In the night in Jakarta, for example, which is a place like it's actually not dangerous if you know how to behave. You know what I mean? It's like, of course, if you're stupid, you're gonna go in different places of the world. You're gonna go in the wrong street. For example, in Amsterdam, we've been attacked one day, by some guys. But my friend who was with me is also from the Balkan area, and he said a swear word in Serbian to them, and they let us in the moment, and they went away. And we were asking in Amsterdam at that time, why, why was it like that? Because he was swearing, in Serbian. And they said to us, yeah, because Serbian mafia is having the place now, in this time. I don't know who is having it now, at that time. But at those times, also the Balkan mafia was there, I mean, people on the street, the bad guys, you can avoid them if you have the feel. You don't need to encounter them. You avoid them all the time. Even in conversation, you are short, and you always, when they invite you somewhere, you don't go, and you have to sense it. It's a little bit of a third feeling, in the gut. I mean, that's how we survive, right? And also with the business, it's like that, I've been burned too. Maybe one day I will talk about it in a podcast, but really in the business, you get burned and you have to accept it. Then you go on, you have to learn something from it, and you go on, That's it. You have to go on, right?
I want to say something. First of all, Nick, that's such a what a proper thing to say, that friendship is, being able to be vulnerable and open with somebody. And that's why Sasha and I have become friends, is because, over the last few weeks, we've been talking to each other, and we've been willing to be vulnerable and tell each other things like this. And that's when we realized that we're so much alike, that if we're not willing to be vulnerable, we don't get an opportunity to have these moments and make these friendships. If not, it's like you're just like one of those plastic girls that are really fake. You don't, fine, they're pretty, but you have no idea who they really are. They probably don't know who they are either. But But yeah, I mean,
You know,
I'm
there
gonna
is
say this: me and Sasha have become super good friends because we did this podcast together, and
and
I hope we get to make a friendship too, Mark.
I'm coming back. Y'all ain't gonna get rid of me.
Alrighty.
yeah,
Soon we're gonna have
yeah.
like 30 co-hosts because everyone that we do a show with, I fall in love with. You know, I mean,
Oh, a really good idea on that topic, man. So my friend is a pioneer. He started Cerebral Seeds with Tony from Sagarmatha, with Simon from Sirius. He owned the gray area in Amsterdam, and he's so damn funny that he's good at self-promotion. He was there when all these legendary crosses happened with Adam Dunn. We should get him on here because he just parted ways with a grow that he was really contingent on that for his income. And I sparked an idea yesterday. I said, with all
what's
your
that?
knowledge, with you pioneering, you start a seed company. And he's like, dude, why didn't I even think of that? I'm like, dude, what do you mean? I'm like, get it going, and I will help you get it out there. That guy needs to get some airplay, man. He was there with the pioneers. And he won't tell you this, but I think he met the Stones in Amsterdam and was their weed dealer for a little bit. He did security for the whole Steel Will tour over there. Shit like that. So if you'd ever be open to get him on there, that would not only be doing
Well,
me a solid,
What's his
but that
name?
would
can you
help
make it happen?
Two Creek Farm on Instagram.
But I'm saying,
Like the
can you
number
make it
2 or
happen?
TWO?
You said he doesn't like to
TWO.
brag. Can you make it happen that he does an episode with us? We'll do it together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because,
as soon as I get off the podcast.
well, one thing about what
I
we're
love that
doing
guy.
here.
I think I owe him money for whenever I'm upset. It's like an hour long, dude. I'm like, what? Are you gonna give me a
Happy.
penalty?
Well, we want to be a place where people tell their story, and Mark,
He's never. He's been on the Adam Dunn show, and I love Adam. And me and Adam go back to Amsterdam. And nothing against you, bro, if you're watching it. But you talk a lot, and we gotta get Bucky's word out there to the world in the most respectful way, Adam. If you ever see this,
Oh, I love Adam. I've been friends with him for a long time too. What I want to do with this podcast is I want to give people a platform to tell their story. And what I was going to say is, a lot of people may look at the title and they see Marc Gallo and they're going to say, well, who's this guy? But you have a compelling story. You have a really compelling story. And so that's what I want to do. So if he wants to do the show, it sounds like, he's got a compelling story. We would be honored to have him do it. And the other thing that I want to add.
He would love to, man. And
let's make it happen.
He was there when this all happened, man. And he's so damn understated. I think once he got into it, he would like spark a fire, and his story needs to be heard. And his genetic line is some of the rarest, most sought after cultivars that are out there. I mean, he's got quite a lineup. I'll let him tell you, and we'll save it for the story.
Let's say this for the show. The one other thing that I want to add, and I know I've talked to you about it, is something else that we're trying to do here on this channel is make a place for smaller growers to tell their stories, home growers, okay? And the thing about it is, a lot of people, they hear these stories and it seems like a fantasy. Like, man, I could never do that. Or when they see pictures or videos of a commercial grow, it doesn't inspire them to grow. And so I want to make a place where closet gardeners can be proud of their garden and they can tell their story about how they were first exposed to cannabis, like you did, like when you told us when you were, planted your first plants in your compost pile. I think people want to hear those stories. And also, when you see a nice closet garden or a little tent garden, I think that inspires more people to grow their own than when they see the Jungle Boys with a massive, multi-tier grow room. right?
Gabby,
So,
I gotta say something. I said it to you before, but I want this to get out there. The dankest weed I've ever seen in my life was grown in someone's basement, grown in someone's trap grow with a creaky HPS light, chemical, all right, or in a tent. And that's where these people, under every little rock, like you had said earlier, in crevice are. And to this day, the dankest weed I've ever seen did not come from a commercial grow. So that's validating what you're saying. They have a voice. It's just on a smaller scale. Some people whisper, I love you. Some people scream, I love you.
mhm.
Yes.
Well, I think the thing is, and like, I don't know if it's humility or like, when I talk to these people, I say, well, who wants to hear my story? Why would somebody want to hear my story when they
Other
can
people
hear the
like
story?
that.
Well, exactly. And there's more people like them than there are people that are growing on a large scale, And so, like I said, I want to encourage home growers. Now, so with home growers, it's a little bit different, right? We can't bring every home grower onto the show, okay? But what we're doing is we're trying to encourage them to send us submissions, like make a video at home. It doesn't have to be professional. Our podcast does not look professional.
I
I
love
don't
it.
have a fancy studio. I got the light shining in the window, making a huge shine on my bald head, which I know is terrible for everyone. But I like I said, I really want this place to be a place where anyone can tell their story. Now, having said that, I want to give you guys a little insight on the interview that we're doing tomorrow, because I'm literally freaking out. Okay, this guy, he made strains for the cartels. Okay, but the cartels when I'm trying to remember what the guy's name. Like when you watch the Netflix special Narcos, the guy
El
who
Chapo,
well, it wasn't El Chapo, the Mexican one. Okay,
Sinaloa.
right, but like the guy that invented Sensimilia. Trying to remember what his name is. But yeah, the guy that invented Sensimilia, he got the genetics from this guy. And I've known him for 30 years, and he told me these stories a long time ago. And then he actually saw the Craft YouTube channel, and he made a comment, and I asked if he wanted to tell his story. He's never told his story before publicly. And
I'm tuning
it's,
in, man. That's
oh my
insane.
God.
I cannot wait to see that.
I've been up all night thinking about like how ridiculous this podcast is going to be. And it's probably going to have to be like multiple episodes because he has the craziest stories. Like, I would never do it justice, and I don't want to be a spoiler. But I'm glad you did your podcast first, because like, I don't know how I'm ever going to live up to this podcast that we're going to do tomorrow. Like, I'm never
I
going to
can
be able
tell
to
you
do a better
how.
one.
Get this First Energy. Very close friend of mine lives with them too, and they might know each other. It would be just insanity. And we talk about it on the daily. He said that's why he doesn't like edibles, because he dreams a lot about some of the things that happen down there. I could possibly get him on there. And I'm not even, it's crazy that that's actually happening, because I speak to this person on the daily, and he's legit. He's got pictures of him down there, and he grew weed for them. So
Wow.
that they're,
I probably shouldn't, but I want to read some of this that he sent
I
me
can't wait to
yesterday.
hear it, dude. Do it. Do it.
Oh my God, it's
Awesome.
crazy.
I love that stuff. I'm going to be honest. If you were to look at my history on what we watch when we're streaming, it's either cartel related stuff, true crime.
Reality.
Wait, so I
Because
have it over here. So I asked him to give me like a short, like description. He said, I brought advanced genetics to cartel marijuana operations. That business, that proposition took me into Mexico to the highest levels of the Guadalajara cartel. And he says,
Swing.
yeah, I supplied genetics for Rancho Buffalo, their giant cannabis farm in Chihuahua. And then he said, I partied in San Francisco and many other venues with Rafael Caro Quintero, who invented Sensimilia, and Miguel Felix Gallardo, head of the Guadalajara cartel. So, like, this is the show Narcos that was on Netflix. This guy lived the life. I said to him,
I love it. Love it.
Did they represent you on the show Narcos? And he says, in Narcos Mexico Season 2, the first episode depicts a party at Gallardo's estate in Mexico City where Al Chapo gave Gallardo a Bengal tiger as a gift. He says, I was the only gringo at that party.
You got to save the rest, man.
Oh, dude, I love that gangster stuff. I'm definitely tuning in.
Yeah, I'm just like, and, you know, I asked him, and he's like, I've never told this story publicly before. You know, he tells friends. He told me 30 years ago, like, you know, when I met him, all this shit that he used to be into. And, oh my God. Yeah, the next show is going to be ridiculous.
I'm all in, man. I can't wait to see it.
Well, I will
totally, listen, I'll totally share it on my Instagram that's happening. You just copy and paste the language you'd like me to use, preempt it, and I got you. I'll put it on all kinds of platforms.
Well, I really want, you know, if there are people that you know that would like to tell their story, please connect us. And so far, the couple of people that you mentioned, I think they would be great for our show, and it would be great. I hope.
Collective, there's a closer. My current genetics.
Do you have any other genetics you want to talk to us about, like your current stuff?
The current menu, there's a lot of new outcrosses on there. I got lucky, and OG Rascal did a discreet auction that was only in his story, and I never win anything. I felt like I won the lottery, was able to, and the others were donated by someone who won the lottery. Shout out to Philly Roger. I was able to get OG Rascals legit Wi-Fi 3, OG Rascals Wi-Fi 43, Skywalker OG, and OG Rascals Lemons. Wow. So the one new outcross that's doing really well, I'm calling Jedi Master, and that is Skywalker OG times 04 Boggs Sour Bubble BC2 F2 from Boggs' first drop, and arguably the best iteration from Bogheads. So Jedi Master is one. The other is Violet Beauregard, which is 90 Thelma Lavender crossed to the same Sour Bubble male, and big buds of floral lavender with the back end of coffee from the Bubba Kush influence from the Sour Bubble. Just delicious, nutritious, terpy, and tasty to the head. We're going down the list. Miracle Bubble Mints Capulator. That was the Cap Junkie cross by the same Sour Bubble male. And Gandia's Gardens. Shawbud from 707 made the cross. Was shared by Gandia's Farms on IG. Taken to F3 by me. So basically a matchup of the best sour I found with the best SFE, OG, and seed form. Commercial yields, bred outside, very resistant. I guess it's sour gasoline terps with the OG Kush on the back end. Stable, resinous, all boxes checked. Moving on, what's the next one?
Let me go back. You said the John already.
I didn't go into what the nomenclature was of the John.
Wi-Fi.
So the John is Wi-Fi 3 cut that I got from OG Rascal crossed to the same Sour Bubble male. The skinny on that's for indica overload lovers. Massive prehistoric fans. Like to be topped twice to really put out longer veg time, and you'll be rewarded with your wheelchair weed where you can sit and watch Yentl and not get bored or that stuff. Recommended. And that's a good movie.
Yentl or the weed?
Well, the movie. That's for the day ender people that don't have a lot planned. That's totally indica overload. And
I think the Violet Beauregard is the one that I'm drooling over the most on your list.
That's a great one too. And during our test runs, I think that might have been my wife's favorite flower, and she's very particular. She's from Northern California, so she doesn't get excited about flower much. And is that it?
I'm not sure. You have an extensive list, but people should just check you out on your
Yeah,
Instagram,
yeah.
Marcus
You can find
Marcus
me.
Aurelius.
Great name.
Thank you. He was a stoic, and some of my all-time favorite quotes came from him. And I got the nickname from my aunt, who was a school teacher. She used to call me Marcus Aurelius, and it stuck as a nickname.
Nice. It's
So
easy to
yeah,
remember. But you know
you
what? Also, I wanted to ask you, Gallo. Are you related to the Gallo family, the winemakers,
I'm related to the other Gallo family, the New York one.
the gangsters?
Yeah,
Oh, sounds like stories for another podcast.
there's so many. I haven't even scratched the surface.
Well, like
I'm also
with
related to the Gallos in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who had the first pizza shop in the 1950s.
Sasha's done 2 podcasts with us, and we're probably gonna have to do. And I mean, like when we talk about his story, we're probably gonna have to do about 4 or 5 more till we even scratch the surface. So
Yeah,
we're gonna
it's a
invite
lot
you to
to
do
tell.
more as well.
It was
Let me.
super nice meeting you, Sasha, and I really want to hear your story because it's all valid to what's going on currently in your area and all over Europe. And I think we're going to see more synergy between the States and Europe as cannabis legalizes, more expansion. And hopefully we can all build long-term relationships with one another and keep some synergistic flow moving forward.
I
Uh,
think so. It will definitely the true people, like the true people will always find a way to communicate and connect on the end. It doesn't matter where you're from, no? You know what I mean? Like people, I think globally also watch this now, not only Europe and America and USA. I mean, it will spread, and this kind of it's the biggest community actually you can have because we are
Well,
spitting truth all the time here.
I
Like
have I have never let an invisible fence get in the way of me making friends or anyone's ethnicity, religion, or political inclination. At the end of the day, it's cheesy and it's cliche. We're all one, and we are closely related than we think, and there should be more camaraderie, especially in the cannabis industry, because we're here for the love.
Absolutely.
exactly.
I'm certainly not here to get rich. Ask my wife.
it wouldn't suck if it happened by happenstance.
Well, the good way to look at it, money procured through cannabis, is it's not the motivation, the monetary. It's a perk. It's not the primary motivation. The perk comes from the passion. I think that's a good way to
Exactly.
look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to leave this too. So I'm going to just thank you once again, Marc. I'm going to tell you, we're going to have you come back on for at least one more podcast to keep telling us stories.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm going to
so
close on this. Every podcast I've super enjoyed goes so fast because there's so much good content and anyone needs to share it.
this episode of Gabbing with Gaby is brought to you by the Breeders Direct Seed Company. In my opinion, the Breeders Direct Seed Company is your premier source for clones and seeds, and they are the only place that you can get the Gaby Staten Island collection. So visit Breeders Direct for all your seed and clone needs.